Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Rise of Ashara video. So here we go, the new Heart of Azeroth. It is available for testing in its full form. Will this undo the wrongs of BFA? Will it have unintended consequences? Well, today we are going to find out. Now this is going to be a pretty darn beefy video, so there will be a timecode, and let's just get into it. The Heartforge is the new progression system of 8.2. It is rather similar to old school glyphs, which I think serve as a decent point of reference. Your heart has 3 slots in it, 1 major slot and 2 minor slots. You put things called essences into these slots. There are a total of 21 essences in the game, and interestingly, these are not drops. They are direct unlocks. That means there is absolutely zero RNG in how these are acquired. They are a wholly deterministic system. So you have this library of essences that you can unlock. Each essence has a major and minor power. If an essence is put into the major slot, then it will activate both the major and minor power on the essence, but if you put an essence into a minor slot, then only its minor power will be active. Major powers tend to be active abilities that are very powerful, while minor powers are typically passives. However, quite often they're very impactful as well. Some essences are role agnostic, though most do require a certain role, i.e. tank, healer, or DPS. Overall, this means that every spec will have a choice of between maybe 1 out of 7 potential new abilities, then of course 3 of the passives. This gives you quite a lot of gameplay customization and a hell of a lot to unlock. Now, these behave like talents, meaning that they can just be swapped about anytime you're in a rested area, just like with the talent system that we currently have. Now, essences unlock in 4 different quality levels: green, blue, purple, and orange, with them gaining new effects as they move from green to purple, and a new cosmetic effect whenever they move to legendary. Now, acquisition is balanced such that the blue quality ones and the greens will be a very fast unlock, but the epic quality ones are more of a, progression unlock. Now, what's particularly nice is that they actually do advance in terms of mechanics as they increase in quality. It's not just larger numbers. This means that you actually get a progression of gameplay as you round out and upgrade your collection of essences, something that I think works great because they are not RNG drops. Now, before we do a live demo, let's talk quickly about where they actually come from. So patch 8.2 brings a new reputation for the Alliance and Horde in Nazjatar, as well as a new rep in Mechagon. So that's 2 new reps to grind, and each one of those reps has 3 essences, with the green versions being unlocked at Honored, the blue versions being at Revered, and the purple ones at Exalted. Now, the raid is set to open between 3 or 4 weeks into the patch, so that should be a pretty darn attainable rep grind within that amount of time. But I imagine many will, of course, be lobbying for those to be account-wide or something like that. There are then another 3 raid-related essences that are from defeating Ashara. There's one for doing it on normal, one for doing it on heroic, and then one from combining aqueous reliquaries from Ashara, which I assume is like a heroic re-clear or a rear clear or something like that. Then the new Mechagon dungeon has 4 unlocks, the Nazjatar War campaign and the subsequent Nazjatar World content, that's also tied to the 4 unlocks for 1 essence. 1 essence is tied to the islands and the mission board. You get 3 essences from dungeon content, with the green versions being from your weekly Mythic Plus chest level 4, the blue one being from plus 7, and the epic one being from Keystone Competitor. Then for PvP, 3 come from Battleground achievements, while 3 come from Arena. 1 comes from the new Heart of Azeroth story, and that's pretty much what the acquisition is like. So overall, it's an acquisition style that has its ups and its downs. Some people are going to feel pressured into doing content that they otherwise would not want to do. For others, though, well, they will be playing the game kind of broadly anyway and will just enjoy building out their set. For the more hardcore raiders, well, some of them might hate this. After all, it's a lot of work to do on each character. Personally, I think it's probably a good design for the average World of Warcraft player, but it's probably a design that works better for cosmetic rewards like the Legion artifact hints. Tying these too much to gameplay certainly is a ballsy move from the team, though by being more direct drops, let's be real, dedicated players will be able to get these quicker than, having to deal with RNG, and this is certainly nothing like RNG legendaries from Legion. So I think, for the people who play a bit of everything and generally dabble and engage in the game broadly, I think this is actually great. For somebody who logs in 3 times a week only to raid and nothing else, well, it kind of isn't great. That said, overly catering to that larger group, or that latter group even, I think would lead to a pretty boring reward design for the game. So overall, I like what they're trying to do. I think most of these unlocks are pretty reasonable. The PvP gladiator ones may be a bit iffy. So yeah, unlocking through achievements instead of random drops, that's an interesting new thing. I'm a bit suspicious of some of the more niche content that's tied to that. Overall, I think there are maybe some larger concerns of tying multiplicative power rewards to skill, but that's always been a thing in the game, really. So yeah, there's maybe just a few funky social situations to deal with, but I think it's only really a concern for, say, the PvE people who want to touch PvP, and then people who are in the inverse of that situation. So overall, yeah, I see a lot of pros, I see a few cons. I'd like to know what you think. It certainly is a different direction to what we've seen before. And with that, let's head in-game for a live demo and walkthrough of these abilities. Okay, so here we are in the Chamber of the Heart. Now, the first thing that happened as soon as I entered here is my heart was boosted up to level 55. That, of course, is for testing purposes, and it really is indicative of a very good thing, that Blizzard wants us to be able to test this new system with ease. Do you know what also really backs that up? So if I right-click in this, you can see I don't have many of these things unlocked. But if I go just over here, Blizzard have placed a vendor, and this vendor actually sells essences for the heart, sells their unlocks. Now that is really important. That means that, mechanically speaking, the entire battery of essences can be tested from day one. Now, as somebody who beta tested Battle for Azeroth, this is not the experience we had with Azerite gear. Indeed, and this really is absurd, Azerite gear was only available on the PvP test realm, where you could get the 120 premades, but those were premades you couldn't use outside of PvP. You could not take them outside of a small area of Borealis. So we instantly here see so much more testability than we saw with BFA beta, which at least does show a good change in philosophy from Blizzard. Okay, so with all that said, let's have a bit of a chat about what goes on. So you'll notice we can now shift right-click our Heart of Azeroth. What does this give us? Well, it gives us a few different things. We have this UI over here, and then we have this big list over here. What's going on? Okay, so we have our empty major slot. We then have our empty minor slot, with another empty minor slot being over here, with this unlocking at Heart of Azeroth level 65. Now, in some of Blizzard's previews, there was more of a constellation of tiny little stat increases that would unlock as you went through this. They seem to be largely pointless though, so it seems like Blizzard might have cut these for the PTR. Of course, we'll just have to see how that develops. But the core of this system is quite simple. So what I'm first going to do is go into my bags. Now here's an essence that I purchased from that vendor earlier. We're going to go up to the Heartforge, which is our new thing. We click on it, and you can see a nice little animation there. And we'll just learn a few of these. I am going to give you a full walkthrough. You can see we get our nice big animation that takes them in. Right now I'm using ones for other roles. These are, of course, role specific. But here we have the Guardian of Azeroth one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to socket this. So I click on it, and then I'm going to click in which slot I want to put it in. That then puts it into that slot. You can then see we have another an empty minor slot, so let's just go and quickly pick up some more. Here we go, the Memory of Lucid Dreams. So let's click in this. Click over there for other empty minor slot. There you go. I'm going to hit the escape button. I'm going to look at my character again, now that I've stepped away from the Heartforge, and you can see that this stuff is here. But here's what's something that's quite nice for the player experience. So if this was your Azerite traits, and say I wanted to respec these, I would have to go and get them reforged. However, this is just treated like talents. So if I wanted to put the Purification Protocol in the middle, well, because I'm in a rested experience area, I can just do that. I can do this out in the world if I use a tomb, just like if I want to change my talents. And that means that it's a far more usable, customizable system that can just tailor itself to your gameplay without you having to go through this whole rigmarole of reforging and all of the extreme costs associated with that. So once again, another good shift in Blizzard's design. Now, you will notice that these are all epic quality. So the epic ones are actually quite good, and you can actually see the next rank section over there on the tooltip that tells you where to get the next one. So I'm just going to walk you through the unlock process. Of course, on the PTR, this has been made very simple for us because we have this vendor. However, we still are able to find out what the unlocks are. So if I go over here to the Vitality Conduit, this is the green version. Now, if I just hover over it here, you can see that its source is from defeating Queen Ishara on normal difficulty. So that's fine. I'm going to right-click on it. And there we go, we've unlocked this version. How do the different versions vary? Well, if we look at this, we can currently see its primary major power effect and then its minor power effect. We can then see for the next rank what's actually going to change. So the major power will get a new effect and the minor power will have its radius increased by 20%. So let's go and just activate this rare one and we'll unlock the blue version of it. There you go, we can see that it now has had its upgrades be applied. And then if we look at the major power and the minor power for its next version, once again we can see that they have received new effects. So let's just go ahead and use them. And there we go. We now have a fully unlocked one with its full level of power. Now that will have been from getting up to Heroic Queen Ishara, so unlocking this one in particular will have been quite a bit of work. Now, I'm going to fully walk you through their acquisition methods in a bit, but first I think it's important to talk about the mechanics that these actually bring to us. So we'll kick it off with Azeroth's Undying gift. Basically, its major power is a 45-second cooldown on use that reduces all damage you take by 40% for 2 seconds, and then 20% for the next 2 seconds. In PvP, that is going to be extremely strong. I mean, hell, I could even see that in many other contexts being extremely strong. So that's pretty darn amazing. Then when we look at its minor power, when you fall below 35% health, you gain some armor for 4 seconds, and then a bit less armor for 4 seconds after that, with that effect only occurring once every 120 seconds. So overall, this seems like an incredibly powerful survivability effect, and you can see that it comes from PvP and is available for all specs. So certainly a very powerful one. Then next we have Blood of the Enemy. So for this one, it's an instant 1.5 minute cooldown. The Heart of Azeroth erupts violently, dealing a bunch of shadow damage to enemies within 12 yards. You gain 25% critical strike against those targets for 15 seconds, and it increases your crit damage by 35% for 15 seconds. So this is a great example of, you can really see how the effects layer up as this one is upgraded. Now, of course, this is the epic version, but note that Blizzard basically intend for you to be able to get the blue one very quick, and for the epic one to kind of be your progression goal throughout Season 3 of Battle for Azeroth. And this one does come from Battleground content. Then its minor power, your critical strikes with spells and abilities grant a stack of Blood of the Enemy. Upon reaching 25 stacks, you gain a bunch of haste for 12 seconds. Each stack of Blood of the Enemy then grants 29 critical strikes, so you can see an extra little effect being layered on. And then Blood of the Enemy has a 25% chance of only consuming 15 stacks, meaning you could get up to its effect pretty quickly again. So that's pretty cool. Then the Engine of Ceaseless progress, a really big one. So you create a field of Azerite energy at your current location whenever you use it. When you stand inside that area, you get a stack of Engine of Haste, Engine of Mastery, and Engine of Critical Strike every 0.5 seconds. Now when you're inside that area, you also take 10% less damage, and whenever you activate it, the stack count of your various different engine effects is immediately increased by 100%. Once again, you see how its effects escalate and become more powerful as you unlock the stronger versions. Then for the minor power, well, every 2 seconds, the Heart of Azeroth empowers you with 31 haste, mastery, or crit. After reaching 10 stacks of one of those buffs, the heart temporarily overcharges, doubling the effects of the Engine of Ceaseless progress for 8 seconds after those stacks are removed. And then when you gain a stack of one of the engine buffs, you get a 20% chance to generate an additional stack, and then a 10% chance to generate all 3 engine effects instead of one random one. As you can see, that is it's extremely powerful. These are extremely powerful in terms of their balancing. And then you can see in terms of sources, this is coming from Mechagon, and I think that makes a lot of sense when you look at just the theme and the lore of it. Next, the essence of the focusing Iris. So its major power, 1.2 second cast, 1.5 minute cooldown. You focus excess Azerite energy into the heart and expel the energy outward, dealing heavy fire damage to all enemies in front of you over 2.6 seconds, and it's castable while moving, which is very lovely indeed. And then its minor power, every 2 seconds, the Heart of Azeroth absorbs nearby latent Azerite energy, increasing your haste, stacking up to 10 times. And then when you hit 10 stacks, your Heart of Azeroth has a high chance to blast your target with a bolt of Azerite energy, dealing 5,600 fire damage. Again, super powerful. Then we've got the Guardian of Azeroth. Now this is interesting. It's an instant 5-minute cooldown that summons in a Guardian of Azeroth to help you in combat. Each time an Azerite Azerite spike deals damage, that's from the Guardian, the cooldown of Condensed Life Force is reduced by 6 seconds. Each time the Guardian of Azeroth casts a spell, you gain haste, stacking up to 5 times, and this effect ends whenever the Guardian despawns. So the Guardian comes in, it's got its various different effects that it casts, and whenever it casts those effects, you get a haste buff. Then for the minor power, your spells and abilities have a high chance to impale the target with a spike of Azerite, causing physical damage, and whenever a spike deals damage, all damage that you deal against that target is increased by 15% for 6 seconds. That's an interesting one. Like, it's super powerful, yes, but also, well, super random, and comes from Ashara. So I suppose that one could be quite the goal. Next, Memory of Lucid Dreams. Instant, 3-minute cooldown. Clear your mind and attune yourself with the heart, increasing your energy generation rate by 100% and your leech by 874 for 10 seconds. Then for its minor power, your spells and abilities have a chance to refund 50% of the energy spent on them and immediately heal you for 16,200. So that's pretty cool. Next, the Purification Protocol. So major power, instant 1-minute cooldown, call down a purifying beam upon the target, dealing 50,000 fire damage over 6 seconds in that area. It's got a low chance to immediately annihilate any specimen deemed unworthy by Mother. When an enemy dies within the beam, your damage is increased by 10% for 8 seconds. Any aberration struck by the beam is stunned for 8 seconds. And then the minor power, Mother has added Purification Protocol to your Heart of Azeroth, allowing your damaging spells and abilities to release a blast of Azerite energy at your target, dealing 30,000 fire damage to any enemy within 8 yards. So basically some random free damage. And then Purification Protocol, so the active ability, deals 100% additional damage against aberrations. Next, Crucible of Flame. Of course, we saw this in the preview, so it's a 30-second cooldown. It's instant. You blast through the target with a ball of concentrated flame, does a bunch of damage or healing, depending if it's an ally or an enemy, and it gives you Ancient Flame, which is its minor, for 5 seconds, so it gives you that buff. Then each cast of concentrated flames will deal double the damage or healing of the previous blast, with that resetting on every third cast. And then it has a max of 2 charges, which is something that I believe is added by its epic version. Then when we move to the minor power, well, your spells and abilities have a chance to grant you Ancient Flame for 10 seconds. That increases your crit by 150 and leech by 64, and causes your damage and healing spells to engulf the target in Cleansing Flame, dealing another 10% of the damage or healing done over 4 seconds. So again, big, super powerful thing. Next, the Unbound Force. 40-yard range, instant 1-minute cooldown, unleash the forces within the heart, causing shards of Azerite to strike the target for 12,000-ish fire damage over 2 seconds. This damage is increased by 300% if it critically strikes and has a 25% increased crit chance. Each time the Unbound Force causes a critical strike, it immediately strikes the target with an additional Azerite shard up to a maximum of 5. And then the minor power, each time you critically strike, you gain a stack of Reckless Force up to 7. Every 10 seconds, your next spell or ability will blast your target with a bolt of Azerite energy, dealing 707 fire damage per stack of Reckless Force. Then next up, we've got the Vision of Perfection. Now, this one ties into your class mechanics. So for me, being a monk, it will activate Storm, Earth, and Fire for 50% of its base duration. Then when the Vision of Perfection activates, the cooldown of Storm, Earth, and Fire is reduced by 10 seconds. So basically, this just ties into your core class cooldown. And then for its minor power, it will reduce the cooldown of your core class cooldown, in this case, Storm, Earth, and Fire, by 16.5% and increase my versatility. And then whenever I activate my main cooldown, it immediately will heal me for 5% of my maximum health. So I'm definitely glad there's one that's more tied into your class. Then finally, we've got the World Vein Boon. So major power, instant 2-minute cooldown, concentrate energy into the heart, immediately causing 3 Azerite shards to erupt in the nearby ground. Then while you're within 8 yards of one of those shards, you regen health every 2 seconds. And then its passive is that every 1 to 25 seconds, a shard of Azerite erupts from the nearby ground for 18 seconds, giving you your primary damaging, or your primary throughput stat when you're within 8 yards of it. So there we go, that is the generic ones as well as the damage-specific ones. Let's quickly go through the other rules. So we've got the Aegis of the Deep, so major power, 1.5 minute cooldown. The elements protect you, reducing the damage that you take from each attack by 2,000 for 10 seconds, and then when it's active, you heal 2,715 health when damaged. Then it's passive, you gain 113 versatility for each enemy within 10 yards, up to 565 versatility. Additionally, you heal for 1,200 health every 4 seconds for each stack of Aegis of the Deep on you, and then when you're below 35% health, that versatility amount is doubled. Then for the tanks, we've got the Anima of Life and Death. So its major power is that you sacrifice 10% of your max health to deal fire damage to all nearby enemies equal to the amount of health that you've lost. And then you heal for 10% of your maximum health per enemy hit, up to a maximum of 50% maximum health. So that's actually a very powerful damage and healing ability, with especially that latter effect being, well, very useful indeed. Then its minor power, Azerite energy courses through your veins, increasing max health by 3,400 every 4 seconds, stacking up to 15 times, with the effect being lost if you fall below 35% of your health. Of course, very ads, very trash focused, and that makes sense given that it comes from Keystone, well, just from your Mythic Plus stuff in Season 3. Then we've got the Artifice of Time. This is a pretty wild one, so 4 minute cooldown, instant, a time vortex. It makes a time vortex around a friendly target, so that could include you, that absorbs 500,000 damage and 500,000 healing over 6 seconds. Then when it expires, the absorbed amount of damage and healing occurs periodically over 10 seconds, and the amount of damage is reduced by 20%. So that 20%, yep, that's super handy, and then I guess it just makes everything a lot more manageable by spreading it out over that 10 seconds. So a very interesting effect indeed, and certainly one that will synergize extremely powerfully with many different healer toolkits. And I mean, that is a massive cooldown to just be giving to every healer in the game. Then for its minor, your heals have a very high chance to give your target some haste and speed for 6 seconds. Next, the Life Binder's Invocation. So its major power is a 3 minute cooldown, 2.2 second cast. Implant 40 seeds of ANR divided over all allies within 30 yards. Seeds that expire unused will reduce the cooldown of this ability by 2 seconds. And then to actually learn what the seeds do, well, we see that in the minor power. So your heals have a very high chance to implant the target with a seed. So basically the major power just gives you loads of seeds around everyone. Now, being implanted with a seed causes a mild hot for 15 seconds, but if the target takes damage, then the seed bursts, and that heals the target for 6,200. So basically its major power is a big AoE sort of hot. Then next, we've got the Nullification Dynamo. So major power is an instant 2.3 minute cooldown. You gain an empowered null barrier, absorbing 165 magic damage over 10 seconds and instantly removing all harmful magic, curse, poison, and disease effects on you. Now that's really interesting because moving into Battle for Azeroth, Blizzard, of course, they really did tone down the amount of magic mitigation that the tanks have, at least if memory serves. So this certainly is them giving tanks the option to have that there, and well, that's certainly powerful indeed. Then moving on to its minor power, well, every 15 seconds you gain a null barrier, which absorbs the next 33,000 magic damage that you take for 10 seconds. And then when the null barrier expires, it implodes, dealing shadow damage equal to the total amount absorbed divided around enemies. Then we've got the Sphere of Suppression. So a tanking one, 45-second cooldown, instant ability. You unleash a heavy pulse of suppressive energy, reducing the movement speed of all enemies within 15 yards by 70% and reducing the damage done to you by 10% for 8 seconds. Now, if this hits an enemy, then your movement speed is increased by 50% for 8 seconds. So very much this is like, you're in a Mythic Plus, oh dear, a bunch of enemies have just been pulled, you use this ability and you're able to kite them. Of course, as a Brewmaster Monk, I already have a lot of mobility, but yeah, that certainly is an interesting ability. Then let's just cover its minors. So enemies who melee you will attack 8% slower, and you will gain 434 haste and 15% increased attack speed for 7 seconds, which seems like quite a powerful thing. I mean, enemies attacking you 8% slower. That's really quite powerful indeed. Then next, let's do the Ever-Rising Tide. So its major power is instant, 30-second cooldown. You overcharge the Heart of Azeroth, causing each spell that you cast to increase your healing by 4% for 10 seconds, and granting you 10% haste, but halting your mana generation, with that effect lasting for 10 seconds. So that's very interesting. If you really want to burn through with that increased haste and the increased healing, if you want to burn through a bunch of spells in 10 seconds to really get work done, this'll let you do it. But it's really going to hurt you. You know, you're going to lose that 10 seconds of mana regen. So that's a really interesting ability. It's super powerful, but also has a very notable downside. So I think that's a really cool design. Then we've got its minor passive, so your heals have a chance to grant either 1617 int for 10 seconds or 2700 mana. The chance of receiving mana increases with your missing mana, and then you have a 20% chance to actually gain both of those effects. Then next, we've got the Well of Existence. Now, to explain its major, I think we have to go through its minor first. So 30% of your overhealing is stored in the Well. And when you heal a target under 60% health, the Well releases up to 10,000 of its stored healing into that target. Now, when the Well contains less than 20,000 healing, it absorbs healing twice as quickly. That latter effect is actually fairly interesting because different healers have different overhealing characteristics. So that kind of equalizes them to getting like a baseline amount of usefulness out of this, or normalizes them, I suppose. Now, its major power is a 15-second cooldown that will release all stored healing inside the Well into an ally, and that healing is amplified by 20%. The Well is not going to release more healing than is needed to fully heal the target. This is so cool. This is a secondary resource mechanic built in now to every single spec. I mean, that totally takes up the position of a talent in terms of its level of power, and like a really good talent in terms of the amount of gameplay that it actually offers you. So I think that's really quite cool indeed. Then next, we've got the Touch of the Everlasting. Interestingly, it has a passive major, so your next death is prevented. That is massively powerful, and you instead regenerate to 10% of your max health and take 85% reduced damage for up to 10 seconds or until you are healed above 70% health, and this can't occur more than once every 7.5 minutes. Man, that's really, really powerful. Then the minor power, the Sands of the Infinity swirl around you, very grandiose, increasing your versatility, and that versatility is reduced by 50% for 7.5 minutes if you die. So it does actually give you a little bit of a nerf to its buff should you die. But that is extremely powerful indeed. And then finally, we have the Vitality Conduit. So its major power, 1 minute cooldown instant, direct the Vitality Conduit towards an ally. Every 0.5 seconds for 6 seconds, they absorb 17,800 health from the highest health ally within 30 yards and are healed for 21,000. The Vitality Conduit triggers its healing burst around the target at the start and end of this effect. So that's super cool. Kind of reminds me of the big Shaman Totem in that it's got a redistributive effect, and it's a 1 minute cooldown, so it's going to have a pretty high uptime. Then for its minor, well, your heals have a high chance to create a burst of energy around the target that heals up to 5 allies within 12 yards for 4,000, and then it heals for an additional 200% if no other allies are in range. So I mean, interesting, certainly a pretty powerful main effect, and then I guess a pretty random minor in that it is, of course, just based off the randomness. Okay, so with the live walkthrough of the Heartforge done, let's just have a bit of a talk about what this is doing in terms of design and just overall what I think about it. So overall, what do I think about this? Well, first up, I love how it operates like talents in terms of you just being able to mix and match and swap them whenever you want, not having to do a reforge or anything. I think that is great. Mechanically, at the very core of it, I love the idea of having a library of effects and being able to put a few of them in. It's kind of like a more free-form version of the talents that we have in a sort of odd way. At least it is with the passives, not really with the active because you only have one slot. And now as for the active and it's one slot, a lot of people are kind of sad that they don't have a new ability for their class forever. What I would say is that I think they're doing this mostly role-based because this is an add-on system for this expansion. Based on what the team have talked about, what Ian has said in interviews, I doubt they will have another artifact or this like system for, you know, extrinsic sort of class design being on an item. I don't think that'll be in the next expansion. I think the next expansion will bring us another talent another talent level. So I think within those bounds, yeah, you choose between one of maybe 8 powerful abilities. Each one of them will naturally naturally slot into your existing class's toolkit in a different way, and I do like how one of them is, you know, a sort of a buff or, you know, modification to your core class cooldown. In terms of that, I mean, most of these things could be a talent on your class, just with slightly different theming. So really, this is just, you know, say 8 different things. They could all be worked into your class's talents. The only difference is that instead of being themed around your class, they're themed around the Heart of Azeroth. So yes, maybe that theming is not as strong given people's attachment to this expansion, but mechanically I think there's a lot of customization there. There's a lot of power, there's a lot of room to, you know, really build out your character in a specific way. This gives us a lot more of what we had from the Legion system, and yes, these things are super powerful. Okay, but I think you also do have to remember, we don't have Legion legendaries, we don't have Legion artifacts and all of their different traits, we don't have class sets, so for these things to have a lot of power on them, well, I think that makes a good bit of sense, and it might be Blizzard acknowledging that while this is not what a lot of people would want in terms of class design, and it does not fix that class design problem, in terms of a lot of stuff to power up your character so that you can go with a tailored build that's super powerful, I think this pretty much is doing that. So overall, I think that because the Azerite gear is basically now trivialized, where you get new traits, you select your traits, but there's no more like grinding AP for your Azerite gear. So basically that, like the downsides of that are thrown in the bin and, you know, whatever, it's just boring from now on. So because that pain point is gone, and I think this does net add more than it takes away. Okay, it would be maybe nicer if we had an expansion worth of class design progression in the right direction come in this patch, but I don't think that's realistic for a patch. So based on what we're likely to get, I do think that this is really quite a good net positive. I think for the average World of Warcraft player, this will offer rewards to go and hunt down, it will offer good customization for your class, and it doesn't punish you for customizing your class and experimenting with your class. That's exactly what Reforging did. So I think this is indicating that Blizzard understand a number of important things. I'd be very interested to see what this means for patch 8.3 and what it means for 9.0. Within the bounds of 8.2 though, I think this is a really good step forward. It's in the right direction, and yeah, that's essentially what I think about it. Now, this has been a bloody long video, hasn't it? So yeah, let's cut it off here. There's lots more of the channel to check out, so I recommend you do that. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.